Welcome to New Realities TV. This is a special showing with a very special guest tonight. His name is Dennis Kucinich. He's a Democrat from Ohio, and he's one of the Democratic presidential candidates. And he's going to be talking to us about his views on the world, the war, and why he thinks he will be a great president. And I know for me that meeting someone like Dennis is somebody who talks with the voice that I would have and speaks for the values that I believe in. So Dennis, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, you know, many people run for president because it's an ego thing or they want to be in control. But I get with you that you have a different agenda. It's more about service. Now, how do you distinguish yourself from other candidates?
Well, you're right. It is about service. I mean, each of us has a life which doesn't really belong to us. It belongs to community, to the world. And my life has always been one of service. And in endeavoring to serve this country as president, I want to help America make this shift to a new world, one where peace and prosperity is possible, one where the dignity of the individual is celebrated. At the same time, the value of community is celebrated. Mm-hmm. And as president, I hope to continue the work that I'm doing already, which is to demonstrate the interconnection of all people, of all countries, so that we can come to a place where war itself will be archaic, where we reject the old notions of dominance and of control and of power, and come to an acceptance of the essential importance of every individual as part of the human community.
So how do we educate a huge population that believes in war, in this particular war, and doesn't have this sense of a world, global community? How would you go about telling people that we're interconnected? It's one to say things, but then how do you educate people in that understanding?
Well, I think first of all, we have to look at our own experience. Where we really feel the value of our own lives is in family and is in community. Those connections we have back in our neighborhoods, the connections that happen in the communities in which we live through labor organizations, through church groups, through sports clubs or ethnic organizations. All of these things help us feel a sense of value and worth. And we need to focus on that and ask ourselves, isn't there a larger community called America? Mm-hmm. Isn't there, as an American community, aren't there values that we share as Americans that help to celebrate the importance of each other and of this country? And when we explore those values, they inevitably must involve education, health care, jobs, securing people's retirement. And so then a candidacy for president becomes a discussion of the American community and the values that sustain community in this country. And then you widen the discussion beyond America to the world, because people all over the world have similar aspirations. Right. And so in this discussion of the American community and the world community, we begin a movement from a model which is organized towards dominance to one of cooperation.
Right. I think that's exactly what we need to form a global community. But this war that's just happened, or is happening in Iraq, and now Bush is thinking about invading Syria, there's a huge amount of the American population that believes in what the president is putting out there. How do you tell people, well, you've been saying this is a wrong war, but how do you get these people to understand what we're doing is American imperialism? That's my word. I mean, how would you...
Well, first of all, the American people love their country, as we all do. We all love America. But we have to make sure that America, that this government of America, loves the American people. Mm-hmm. And the pursuit of war and tax cuts which go to the wealthiest Americans really are not consistent with a nation which loves its people. There's no question that people love the nation, but does the nation love the people? If you have 41 million Americans without decent health care, where's the love for the American people? If you have so many of our children who are not getting the education they need, where's the love for our children? If you have millions, almost 9 million Americans out of work, where's the love for for workers. If you have so many retirees who are being cheated out of their retirement, or for whom they're being told Social Security will be privatized and perhaps that'll be in jeopardy, where's the love for our elderly? So I want to see an America which loves its people in the same way the people love their country.
Yeah, but so what do you say to George W. Bush, who obviously doesn't have this opinion or this idea about loving the people?
Well, you can't have tax cuts and war and maintain a domestic agenda. That's what it amounts to. And so we also have to ask, what is the appropriate role for America in the world? I do not believe the American people want our country to be the policeman of the world. I don't think they want America to be the conqueror of the world. No, there's no question we have a powerful military.
Right.
The question isn't whether we can win.
Right.
The question is, what is winning? What do we win? And what happens afterwards? Do we create a more peaceful world or the opposite of it? And I think that a good case could be made that the administration's policies are creating the opposite of a peaceful world and are creating chaos, which will ultimately make America less safe.
Yeah, but why do you think they're doing that? What is their agenda, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's less important to dwell on their agenda than it is to talk about what would we do.
Okay.
That's different.
Okay.
And what I would do that would be different.
Yes.
Would be to pursue an America that sees its role in the world as cooperating with other nations for the security of America and for the security of the world. It would be to create an America which uses the resources of our country to provide health care for all and jobs for all and education for all and retirement security for all, and to create an American dream where everyone would have a chance to participate in. And so what that means is that we'd have to give up a doctrine of intervention, of first strike, of a willingness to use nuclear weapons,
Right.
and instead create a context for nations to work with other nations on matters of international security, stop this incredible military buildup, which can lead only to disaster,
Right.
and to use the resources of this country to take care of our people.
Right. Well, I'm very happy you said that, because there's not many candidates out there talking about, well, like you're doing, a Department of Peace, a department in the government dedicated to maintaining the peace. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
The idea of a Department of Peace is to look at the issues within our own society. I mean, let's face it, domestic violence, spousal abuse, child abuse. I mean, these are real issues in our society that call out for an organized approach to dealing with them.
Right.
A Department of Peace would seek to make nonviolence an organizing principle in our society to deal with those issues, as well as gangs, police-community relations challenges. Let's look at what we can do to make America a more peaceful nation. At an international level, the Department of Peace would take the steps that would create systems of support to work to make war itself archaic. I mean, who says we're stuck with war? Where did this idea come from that war is inevitable? We need to explore it. And a Department of Peace would create an agency, an instrument in the federal government that would provide the option, the alternatives to war at all times, and look at the deeper questions about our humanity and say, maybe it's time for us to just set war aside and use what Franklin Roosevelt called the science of human relations to begin to settle our differences without killing each other.
In our country, there seems like the media itself is hooked up with the White House and the administration's policies. It doesn't seem to be a fourth arm of the government they call the press. So it's right now, the media is sort of dominated by White House policies. How would you go about creating a more independent media, less dependent on White House approval?
Well, there's 3 points here. The first one is that the media has generally been a spear carrier for the government.
Right.
I mean, in a book called The Press and the Cold War, Aronson wrote 30 years ago about how the press served as supernumeraries for the government during the period of the Cold War. Mark Hertzgaard, in a book on the Reagan presidency, a book called On Bended Knee, talked about the subservience of the media during that time. So this is nothing new.
So how do you change it?
But the way that you change it, the way you begin to make a change, is to, first of all, in this time, we need more independent media. And the way to do it is to start to break up some of the media monopolies.
So how do you go about doing that?
Well, the Federal Communications Act of 1934 called for the electronic media to serve the public interest, convenience, and necessity. We've gone a great distance from that with the concentration of power in fewer and fewer hands within the media. We need to create more independent media in this country and break up the monopolies. We also need more public access. At election time, candidates should have free radio and TV broadcasting so they can get right to the people. We need to make sure that we revive the fairness doctrine. We need to make sure that there's ways of people having more and more access as a community, because so many of the cable networks were formed with the idea of service to the community. They've kind of deviated from that. So the public has to reclaim its right to the airwaves, which, by the way, was guaranteed in the Federal Communications Act of 1934.
Everything you're saying is about going up against corporate America,
No, it's
right?
not going
because we have to go against the oil companies and
It's
the
not about-
multinationals.
No, it's not about going against. It's about Americans reclaiming their sense of agency and their authenticity as participants in a democracy.
Right.
The airwaves belong to the people. We give, just as we give utilities a franchise to operate, we give permission to people, licenses to operate, and they're supposed to operate in the public interest. And when they fail to do that, the public has a right to look at those licenses again. And as President of the United States, I would challenge the media to a higher level of participation with a sense of American community. There's many good people in the electronic media in this country. There's a lot of visionaries in it, but we need to insist on more of a dialogue with the nation and more of a sense of connectivity and something that is more public service oriented. We've lost some of that.
Right. Is there any practical ways that you see giving back this power to the people? Because now people are just like, oh, what's the use?
Oh, no, it's
You know?
never what's the use. We're in a democracy, and a democracy always carries with it the solutions to the challenges which face us. One practical way. Every candidate for federal office should have the ability to communicate directly with the constituency through free radio and TV time. Now, let me tell you how that would impact. So much of the time now that people spend raising money for campaigns is to get on radio and television.
Right.
Candidates raise hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal elections only, and sometimes millions, only for the purposes of communicating over the electronic media. We need to change that. We need to make sure that people have the ability to go right to the candidate, to the public, and that way we minimize some of the harmful effects of fundraising, which cause candidates to forfeit their independence in order to raise the money to get on TV and radio.
No, I agree. That's a great idea. So let's say you're elected. What is the first thing that you will do when you get in the White House?
Well, I've already committed there, and the first thing that I would do is to take steps to cancel NAFTA and the WTO. It's a trade agreement. We can president can give 6 months notice and then withdraw. And the reason why I do that is this: we've lost over 3 million jobs in this country due to our trade agreements.
Right.
And globalization has not worked for the American people, nor has it worked for people around the world. And America owes it to people in this country and around the world to regain some control. And the way you do that is to set aside NAFTA and the WTO and go back to bilateral trade, which would be conditioned on workers' rights, human rights, and environmental quality principles. And in that, you begin to really create a promise for trade, which is to lift everyone up. Right. But trade in this country has meant a loss of jobs, a decline in wages and benefits, a race to the bottom, and globally, it has not kept its promise of lifting people up. Actually, poverty has increased around the world during this period of so-called free trade. So as president, I would take steps to cancel NAFTA and the WTO and return to bilateral trade that would be conditioned on those principles of workers' rights, human rights, and environmental quality principles.
Thank you. No, that's excellent. As far as personally, there's been issues of abortion that I'm not sure of your position on. So would you like to just say?
Sure. You know, I've always done everything I could to try to make abortions less necessary.
Of course.
You know, I've supported sex education and birth control, and at times my voting record would reflect an opposition to a woman's right to choose.
Yes.
But I've looked at this issue carefully, and I've come to the conclusion that these efforts to increasingly try to criminalize abortion are wrong.
Right.
That Roe v. Wade must be protected. That that the protection of Roe v. Wade involves not only protecting a woman's right to privacy, but protecting a woman's role in society as being having full legal agency, as having freedom in this society, and that while we need to do everything we can to minimize the possibility of abortions, we also must do it within a constitutional framework, which assures that a woman has a right to choose. And so I have said that if elected president, I feel that Roe v. Wade must be protected, even to the extent of requiring candidates for the Supreme Court to undergo a litmus test.
Right.
If they would support Roe v. Wade, then they could be appointed. If they didn't, they wouldn't be.
I see. That's interesting. Now, as far as like weapons in space and this whole global network that some of the military-industrial complex wants to put in place, I suppose you're against the weapons in space program, right?
Well, actually, I've worked nationally and internationally with representatives of other countries to try to support an approach which would ban all weapons in space. And when you think about it, the metaphor for our world of the heavens has always been a place of transcendence, of being able, of aspiration. Think of what it means for the United States, which is really leading the way in this, to have platforms in space that have weapons aimed at anywhere on the earth below. It changes the whole metaphor of our existence from one of the heavens being something that offers transcendence to one of foreboding. And so it really creates the possibility of wars for the future by having those weapons in space. So I want to ban weapons in space.
I agree. And not only that, if we are really a global family and we live in an open society, then the possibilities of other contact, I don't know what you believe in that, but I think that's very possible if there's life on other planets. We're here to welcome. I mean, I don't want to make you...
Well, the first question is, what about life on this planet?
Right.
And what can we do to protect this planet from blowing up?
Right.
If we do that, then we can allow the possibility of a more beneficent universe.
I agree. I agree. Now, if you wanted to leave people with just a few points about, you know, how you would function as a leader of this nation, what would you say to people directly? You can say it to them.
Well, I would first of all ask people to visit our website at kucinich.us, Kucinich.us, and to learn about the wide range of issues and a vision for America, which is represented there. I'm a Democrat, but I'm also politically independent. I hope to create a party which will bring the Greens back to the Democrats because of a strong stand on environmentalism, to bring the Natural Law Party back into a primary because of my stand on sustainability, to bring the Reform Party back because I'm challenging these trade agreements that have really undermined our freedom in our country, to bring the Libertarians back because of my challenge to the Patriot Act and all of these things that undermine civil liberties in this country. America has such great potential for our people and for the world. But in order to achieve that potential, we have to set aside these policies which take us into war. We have to work to create peace in our own country and peace with other nations around the world through international cooperation. And when we do that, we'll have the resources we need to be able to meet the requirements of our people for universal health care. I'm the only candidate who actually has a plan for universal health care, take the private sector out. I'm the only candidate who has a plan to avoid privatizing Social Security and to take the retirement age back to 65. And I'm the only candidate who has a plan for a full employment economy, to put America back to work and to rebuild our cities. I'm the only candidate who has a plan for universal education from pre-kindergarten all the way through to college, so that every American should have an opportunity to be able to create his or her own dream. And so there's so many ways in which my candidacy is distinct from the others. And as we approach the 2004 elections, I think that people will see more and more that it's my campaign that stands distinct from all the other Democratic candidates, and that will lead to the Democratic nomination and, I believe, to the presidency.
The people united will never be defeated. 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 The people.
And one last thing is to tell people who are for the war in Iraq and now going into the Syria and are totally behind the president, how do you get them to see that war is not the answer? Because it's frustrating.
Well, it's hard for people to hear this, but the war in Iraq was illegal, and it did not reflect on the highest principles of this nation. We still have not seen the so-called weapons of mass destruction, which was the basis of the invasion.
It's horrible.
And a lot of innocent people were killed.
Yeah.
America's role in the world is through international cooperation. It is not through invading whoever we choose. The policies which brought us into Iraq and which may bring us into Syria and to Iran and God knows what other nations, derive from a national security strategy which assumes for America a right to preemptively attack any nation. Nation doesn't attack us, we attack them. In a world where so many nations have nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons technologies or trying to acquire those technologies, that's a very dangerous approach. It makes America less secure. And so my approach is to work to secure our country, to make it safe. And we do that through international cooperation, not through war. War must become a thing of the past, and it should already be a thing of the past. The war in Iraq was not necessary, nor would any other war be necessary, and we need to work to make war unnecessary and to reject those doctrines which include war as a possibility.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What I like about you is that you're a great philosopher and thinker. You talk in poetry. You quote the history of the ages. You tap into this heartfelt space. And I think for me, that's what distinguishes you from other candidates.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And inevitably, an election has to be about the heart.
Yeah.
And it's about the heart of this country, and it's about the heart of the world,
Right.
as it connects to all of us.
Right. Right. Thank you so much for being here, telling me what you think and telling the people of this country. I'm talking to Dennis Kucinich. He is a presidential candidate in 2004, and he's about starting a Department of Peace. I do hope you become president.
Thank you very much for your...
So please vote for him and really look into some of his policies and his speeches on the internet. That's Kucinich.us. I'm Alan Steinfeld. This is a special edition of New Realities. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
I you know.
I think more and more people of goodwill come to understand that how we think makes a difference. That we think makes a difference. What we think about makes a difference. That to be conscious of consciousness, to be aware that our thoughts can have a material impact on our nation, certainly within our own sphere. That's the vision that is also included in a proposal that I put in on July the 11th to create a Department of Peace, where nonviolence, we all believe that this can be a better country and a better world. And yet moments come every day when we give up a little bit of that. We say, you know, this event happened this day, and this event happened that day, and there's war here and war there, and I don't think it's ever going to happen, and I'm just going to go hide, or I'm just going to go live out my life and forget this. We have to protect our own dreams. And part of that dream has to be that we have a right to have peace in this nation and peace in this world, that we have a right to help all people evolve to a point where in some, maybe not too distant future, war will be viewed as archaic, where people would look from that place and say, my God, how is it that people ever tried to kill each other? How is it they even had plans to put weapons in outer space so that people could start firing back wherever they wanted to. So we have a moment here. The next question is, what do we do about it? There are moments when people come together, when their focus is such and their intention is pure, that we can accomplish a qualitative transformation of the political structure. It is possible, and it begins with our thoughts, but it also connects from the thought to the word to the deed, and so you have an integral approach. There is at the core of this idea to take weapons into space this disconnection from human values. It's a disconnection from the human heart itself.